accessory structure on the property located at S69W22965 National Avenue. Sean, why don't you kick us off? Please listen and make sure Sean is describing everything accurately, and I'm sure he will, but...
Thank you, Mr. President. So essentially what the petitioner is asking for here is just a waiver from our building size requirements for an accessory building. The property is just over an acre in size. What they're proposing is a 36-foot by 60-foot approximately, it's a couple inches off, which is 2,160 square feet. The accessory building will be used for storage and a home workout gym for personal use. Again, what's normally allowed is 1,200 square feet for a parcel of that size, and they're asking for 2,160. In addition, the height of the building will be 20 feet 4 inches, measured from peak to grade. The building will have metal siding, metal roof, 2 overhead doors, one which would be facing the north and one facing west, and the building will also have windows. The building itself will be constructed in essentially the same exact footprint as the previous accessory building that collapsed due to snow load back in February of this year. So they're looking to build a building in the same location as the previous one. If you recall, this property used to be much larger. It was attached to the property to the southeast that was divided off for the by Mr. Klum for the 5-Star Energy business, and so the remainder here is just over an acre. And so the accessory building that was left on the property was essentially legal non-conforming use because it was more than would be allowed under the 1 acre lot size. And so that's collapsed. They're asking to rebuild in the same footprint. I'll also mention that the property itself has got some landscaping both around the structure, both on the lot and on adjacent property as well. What's being proposed, aside from the exception for the 1,200 square feet, it meets all other zoning requirements, including the height. The height is larger than the normal 18 feet that's allowed. However, we do allow an increase as long as you're set back from all property lines by an additional foot for each additional foot in height. And so what's required based on their height is 23 feet, and they are set back a minimum of 23 feet from the smallest offset from the property lines. For a waiver modification, the petitioner has to provide a written request, which they have done, and the Plan Commission has to make a determination, which includes the following factors. Doesn't necessarily have to be an affirmative finding for each of these, but you have to consider each of these. A, whether the request for the waiver modification, if granted, would be consistent with the general intent of the chapter, whether the request would adversely affect property owners in the area, whether the request would benefit the petitioner's project in a way that's not inconsistent with the village's interests, whether the petitioner is in full compliance with applicable ordinances and agreements with the village, and whether instead of granting the request, the zoning chapter should itself be modified to accommodate similar situations. And so the the Plan Commission needs to weigh those factors in determining whether this request would be granted. The last thing I'll add here is that if this is approved, just like any building over 900 square feet, accessory building, there would be a deed restriction filed on the property so that it can't be used for commercial and industrial purposes. And that's all I got. If you choose to approve the waiver, I do have a series of conditions on the last 2 pages of my staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sean, the 5-Star Energy property that we carved off this piece of property by CSM, that's to the east, right?
That's to the east and southeast, correct?
Southeast, right. They share a common border, but not the entire common border.
That's right. And then let me just pull up a map here so I can
right here. Yeah.
Get a better sense. So they do share a border with future commercial property or property that's being developed. The property in question, their property, along with all those neighboring properties along National, are planned for residential business transition. So over time, they can stay residential as long as the owners want them to stay residential. But over time, some of those properties might redevelop to commercial uses. We'll, of course, be reviewing them carefully for compatibility and making sure there's proper buffers and the uses that would not be incompatible with surrounding residential uses. So I'm looking at the aerial now. Yeah, to the east, to the southeast is the commercial property. However, to the northeast, the west, and the south, those remain residential uses that surround the property. As I mentioned before, to the east there are some existing landscaping. There's existing landscaping behind the on the south side of the subject property. There's existing landscape on the west. Essentially, the building will be screened from Avenue by landscaping. So the property itself has a fair amount of perimeter landscaping as well. One thing we talked about when we first started looking at the project was the fact that the building that existed before wasn't quite as tall as the building being proposed, and it did have a little bit more architectural detail. That building was metal as well, but it was a little more. The massing was broken up a little bit more on that building versus this one, which is more essentially a box that's a little bit taller than the previous one. So all things for consideration.
Is the landscaping, the existing landscaping, is that going to remain and not be like removed or maybe bulldozed or whatever when you put up your new building?
So there were some like bushes in front of it. David pulled those out due to like demolishing the building.
Right.
But we do plan to replace them.
Okay.
Oh, immediately north of the building that we're just to the north?
Yeah.
Yeah, those aren't providing a buffer from any properties though either.
No.
But nothing on the perimeter is being removed, correct?
Hopefully not. Some of the trees to the. Oh, sorry. No, all of those are staying.
That's already been removed.
There's like a pine tree. A larger pine tree that has stayed. It was just some small like green bushes. They were maybe like 3 feet tall. But all of the major trees are staying, and then the tree line that's on our property. Sorry, I moved from Milwaukee. I missed the lake and giving directions.
The east or the south?
The east.
The east property line?
The east. All of those trees are
The lake
staying.
is always on the east.
It's true. Yeah, it's
I
totally
know.
true.
It's been a real problem. And freeways and, yeah. All of those are staying as well. Some of them are on the Clum property. So we're hoping that those ones will stay too. And they dug down and hit some roots. So we're hoping that they don't die. But yeah, all landscaping is staying.
Yeah, personally, I'm not that concerned about your border with the Clum property. It's a contractor's yard.
Yeah.
The Plan Commission required landscape.
They have additional landscaping they have
taken
to
on
put
the
in.
back
Okay.
fence, so that would be helpful there. You're probably, 200 feet off of National Avenue, Sean? Or
It's far.
You can't see that building at all from National.
I think over
Not
200
really.
feet.
It slopes down.
it slopes down, right? And it's
Yeah.
over 200 feet,
Quite a bit.
I think.
Yeah.
It says 340.
Right,
one
so
side
the
and-
building, at the front of the building is probably 200, or
Sure.
maybe even more, actually. Well,
This says 340 here, and this says 240.
It averages 230 feet from the property line.
Yeah,
So
there
the
we
middle of the building is 230 feet back from the property line. So and heavily obscured by landscaping in front.
in the house,
And yeah,
In the house.
in the house. So it's just your neighbors to the direct south and neighbors to the west, and there's landscaping there.
And the neighbors were notified of the
yes, and I do have
request.
one letter when we get to the additional public comments to read it. Yes, all neighbors within 500 feet of this property were notified of the public hearing and the information that's on the website or here if they wanted to see it. And no one has called or come in. But I do have one letter when we get to additional public comments, Mr. President.
Okay. Which we'll get to soon.
There's a fence. Is there a fence? There's a fence on the west property line, correct?
Yes. Partial. Yeah.
Partial fence, but it blocks, it
But it
basically
blocks
blocks
the-
the view of the building from the west, right there, correct?
Sean, you said it's basically in the same footprint of the original.
Give or take a couple inches, yeah.
So it's not such a big deal, but it's bigger than what we would normally allow because that's what's been there in the past.
Right.
The biggest issue is it's just 3 feet higher than what our code would call for. normally.
But still permitted. We still allow it, but it's a little taller than the previous one, and it's a little bit like it's a little less detail maybe than the
Right, but that,
previous building. But it's a new building versus an older, more rundown
Yeah,
building.
it's that
Yeah.
building is very rundown.
So those are the main considerations from my perspective.
And you do know about the deed restriction. I understand you're using it for storage in a home workout gym? But for personal use, you're not running gymnastic classes or
Correct.
whatever,
No.
lessons, so on.
My husband he works for the Bucks on the trampoline dunk team, so he's hoping to have a trampoline in there for himself for training purposes.
Okay. I guess he has to work tonight.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll be out of here by 8.
Yeah. Got to give her time to get home too.
10 to. No speeding. Watch out for deer. You're not in Milwaukee. Real deer, not the ones that are running around
bingo.
by
For the ones in
Fiserv
Milwaukee.
questions?
Comments? Questions for?
the aesthetics, to me, that's an aesthetics issue. That doesn't bother me at all. And the height, 3 feet in the height, doesn't seem to be a big deal. But you did say the question on whether you grant a variance versus changing the code.
That's a consideration as to whether or not the
That
code
still
should be changed.
Could be a consideration. In the long run, I would like to see any of these variances at least come to us here so that we have a shot at it, rather than changing the code.
Good point.
This isn't necessarily precedent setting in that respect. We've granted other variances, but I still like the idea that
You've always said that when the building gets to a certain size or there's an exception, we got to look at the context to make sure it doesn't
Right.
disrupt the neighbors, it fits with the site. And so that's exactly what's being asked tonight.
Shall we go for public comments? You, sir, are just here to observe, or do you have a public comment on this specific matter?
No, I think it's great. I think my comment would be that you guys are taking great consideration on all aspects. But yeah, I really nothing with this.
Okay. And there's no other neighbors, but you did receive
Yes,
one
I did.
email or
Yeah,
letter?
I did receive an email from Mark and Sherry Jacoby, who live right to the south of the property at W229 South 7030 Guthrie School Road. And it says, "We have no objections or concerns with David and Samantha St. Pierre's replacing or rebuilding of the 36 by 60 building. We are the neighbors directly to the south." And it was dated the 13th.
Right, so there's your 156 feet border, and they're going to look at the backside of the building through the trees, I suppose, if they can even see it. Right? Okay, that's good. And any other issues with your neighbors that you know about?
No.
Okay. And I would concur that, we do have an ordinance. I think it's very generous. I mean, your 1 acre lot, you can put a 30 by 40 building on it. That's 1,200 square feet before you even need permission from this plan commission. You can just get it for the building permit. You're here because you're more than that. You are R1 zoning. Normally, I think the building you proposed in R1 zoning on 1 acre under our ordinance would be way too big, and I'd be very hesitant of approving something like that, but in your case, because it's a replacement of an existing building,
Correct.
your lot was made smaller because of a CSM that we just approved.
For a bigger building.
For even a bigger building, contractor's yard building.
Business transition.
Yep, it's transition, so, yeah, if this is not in the middle of a subdivision, R1 subdivision, it's R1 subdivision, or sorry, R1 zoning, but it's business transition area. And you do have a contractor's yard next to you. You're replacing on the same footprint, just a little bigger. So I think all of those are reasons that this isn't going to set a precedent for anybody else in the village of Vernon. You have no animals, I understand, keeping your landscaping other than the bushes in the front that you intend to replace anyway. You can't see it from National Avenue. Your neighbors to the south, have no objection to it.
No comments from any of the other.
No comments from any of the others. So if you look at our list, Sean and Jim and Mrs. St. Pierre, is it consistent with the general intent of the chapter? Yeah, I think so. I would say that it is. If granted, would it adversely affect property owners in the surrounding area? Well, we don't have any, we had no objection and no other objections to it. And they were all notified within 500 feet. Would it benefit the petitioner's project, not inconsistent with the village interest? Well, it's replacing an existing building about the same size and the same footprint. It's hard to say that it isn't. I mean,
And the extra height is for a specific purpose, right? It's
right, and the extra height is for a specific purpose of use, personal use, in connection with the petitioner's occupation. Full compliance with applicable ordinance and agreements.
everything else is in compliance. Correct?
Everything else is in compliance. It's just, the waiver is limited to size because you meet the rest of the ordinances, so I think that one's met as well. And to your point, Jim, about should it be changed? I don't know. Our ordinance is pretty generous. I'd hate to say, we ought to change our ordinance so that we see less of these.
These are case-by-case basis.
Right. I like the landscaping, like the fact that you can't see it from National, so
And being a transition,
being in a
I
transition,
mean,
we're not putting
it's
this in
only
a
a matter of
subdivision.
time.
So
Yes.
because that whole strip there, that's really about the only area they have business right now.
Right.
Nah, I just moved there.
Yeah. you can stay as long as you want.
Yeah, we bought this house in January of 2021, and this happened February 2021, and it was one of the major reasons why we purchased the property. So, kind of a bit of bad luck, but
Oh, wow.
or,
Well, welcome to the village of Vernon.
Yeah.
Sorry
Thank you.
about the snow, but
Thank you. Yeah,
It was a bad year for snow.
yeah. And I hope you had insurance.
yeah, it covered a portion. I think rebuilding will be quite a bit more, but it's okay.
Any conditions that we need to discuss specifically? You've-
So, yeah,
you've
the only-
listed them out. But
The only conditions here is that one, you've considered the factors of the waiver, and that the building will be built in accordance with the plans that were submitted, comply with the residential R1 district and the height requirements. Deed restriction gets recorded to the property. Building inspector can request a recertification of that setback to make sure it is 23 feet from the lot line, because that's very important. Obtain all permits from the village, and then reimbursement of expenses, and that's it.
we should make a motion to
Approve?
approve the accessory building waiver request for David and Samantha St. Pierre for the property located on S 69W 22965 National Avenue, Village of Vernon, subject to the following conditions as listed in the staff report dated June 29, 2021. Is that the right one, Sean?
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion? We discussed it. Any further? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries.
So I'll get the zoning permit based on tonight's decision to the building inspector, and then you can get your building permit from
Okay.
him once the deed restriction is recorded, and Karen can help you with that.
Right, you or David call tomorrow.
Call tomorrow.
What you need to do.
Okay, and is there something about, like, we wanted to get approval, but now we can take it down, and do we need,
Vince will help you with
A raising permit?
yeah, just
He'll
because
walk
it
you
is
through that whole
a
process.
hazard. I'm so nervous.
Yep.
Okay,
Oh, demolition? Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Vince will be in tomorrow from 1:30 to 3:30, so if you could stop and then see him tomorrow, that would be the best.
Okay. Call, okay.
Or call me first, and then I'll walk you through some other things, and then you can talk to Vince. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I'll let David know.
And get everything of value out of there.
Yeah, luckily we didn't really have anything in there yet because we had just moved in, and it's been quite a experience.
So welcome to the room, Fernando.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is ordinance update. And I think, should we table that for now? Is that what you?
We're table to staff, gentlemen. Is that,
Yeah,
Table
we
to
had just
staff.
updated them the last month.
Right, and I went to the board, and the board, the village board concurred, but they were looking for more.
yeah, and what we're waiting for is E-code is giving, all those ordinances that we have to be codified. So once we get that, financially where we are, we'll have that by our staff meeting in August, and I'll give everybody a better perspective of what kind of money we have in this year and what we need for next year. And then maybe some other options with some of the other granting proposals, but,
Okay.
so we agree we'll do that at staff, gentlemen?
Yep, we'll table to staff by consensus.
yeah.
August staff.
Yeah, there is no July staff.
Darn.
You gotta go fishing, Jim.
All right, minutes, May 12th, I think we tabled those for corrections. They went to the corrections were made, and then it went to the board.
Board
'cause it was a
approved.
joint, and the board approved. So I'll make a motion to approve the Village of Vernon Board of Trustees and Plan Commission meeting minutes for Wednesday, May 12th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, minutes are approved. Plan Commission, June 9, 2012. And I think that meeting, there was just the sign,
Yes.
the off-premises sign, and I see it's, yep, everything's in there. 6 months, I haven't seen the sign yet. I drove by, I didn't see one there yet, but,
They were making it as soon as the village board approved it. So it's being made, and Ron took his sign down.
yeah, I noticed there was no sign there.
Yeah.
And he can come in and get one if he
He
wants.
said if he needs one, he will, but
Yeah.
sales are booming.
Well, that's good. So I'll make a motion to approve the Wednesday, June 9, 2021 Village of Vernon Plan Commission meeting minutes. Is there a
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yay. Who's going to adjourn?
Well, go Bucks, and I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Jim?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was a biggie.
We're adjourned.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.